Welcome Jenny and Reese to the second episode of Homecare Matters. Please introduce yourselves.
I'll start. So my name is Reese. I am the Deputy Managing Director, and this is my second podcast ever. So I'm becoming a little bit of a professional at these kind of things. Looking forward to season 2 based on the episode so far. I've been with the business coming up to 5 years this summer, and part of my role is overseeing the operational side of the business along with finance and the various other departments as well.
And I'm Jenny Thornton. I joined 2 years ago, Right at Home GF Group, because we're quite a big group, lots of territories now. And my role is community relationship managing. So I'm out there in the community most of the time, connecting people to basically answering all the questions that they might have. I've done lots of podcasts. I quite like them. And if we do turn this into an action movie, I shall be right there with Reese.
What is a care advisor?
I think the idea of a care advisor is somebody that has that knowledge of the care sector, that is understanding of what good quality care looks like, how to access specific funding through local authority, and also a little bit of the knowledge and understanding as far as CHC or continuing healthcare funding is concerned. The whole care advisory setup, I suppose, and myself and Jenny have been working on this throughout 2026 so far, has very much been about putting individuals at the forefront of the idea around care. It's all about putting ourselves in their shoes as to what information they need access to and how quickly they can get it.
And basically, it's purely formalising what we were doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing wraparound, personalised listening to individual questions and seeing if we can find answers. So Reese had the brainwave of then turning it into a strategy, a care advisor's workbook, which we can now update on a very regular basis because information changes, financial years, budgets, governments, everything changes. So we now make absolutely certain that we keep up to date on this so that we can give the right information out.
So why did you decide to set up the Care Advisor initiative?
So the idea, I suppose, came about last year from some experiences that were felt from individuals that had inquired with the business. From our perspective, what we wanted to do is ensure that everybody that has a touch point with Right at Home has a very positive touch point, and so that we really are a one-stop shop when it comes to care and that knowledge building. Off the back of that feedback, one thing that was evident was actually just a little bit around kind of experiences and knowledge and accessibility, I suppose, to various different levels of funding and contacts within local authority or at government level with benefits or just advice and help. So really off the back of that experience, what we decided to do was set aside a bit of time and actually build a firm project around this to build on that workbook, as Jenny's just mentioned, and to set it up really so that it can be ever-changing, evolving, developing, and we use existing care advisory conversations and chats to help build and continue to grow that workbook so that mine and Jenny's knowledge is at the very top it can be, so that if there are significant changes, we won't talk about council changes. I don't think we've got enough time in this podcast, have we, really? I mean, I don't think the councils fully understand how the changes, but even navigating something like that, it gives us a great step into these organisations because we are Right at Home and we are a care provider, CQC regulated, so we've got that input already. We've got a space at the table really to sit and discuss that more in depth. So from our perspective, it's great to be kind of forward-facing, public-facing, and be able to share that knowledge, I suppose.
And we're CQC good and outstanding. So when you're at that level of expertise, the expectation from us is to be the very best that we can. And every day we're facing people who, there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And this comes when you have frailty and mobility issues, or you might have had a diagnosis of dementia. And then comes the stress and the anxiety. And when we're seeing people every single day in these states of confusion and desperation for help, it really feels extremely good to be able to answer some of those questions for them.
Where can people come and meet the care advisors to talk?
The great thing is that we are in all of the communities all of the time. It's one of our purposes to be there for people. So we've got the Sunflower Cafes, we've got Love to Move, we've got Singing for the Mind already in all the communities, and we make fantastic friends within the care industry. So there are so many places that you will find us doing presentations on our care advisory, fall prevention, safe exercise, dementia and communication in libraries, in village halls, within church communities. So we are extremely embedded in the community, which is the perfect place to then have that care advisory.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think as well, from my perspective, it's great for us to already have that foothold in the community, to be able to set up a project like this and be able to see it grow and develop as quickly as it has done. You know, we've been able to really publish where we're going to be, the times we're going to be there, and that people can actually come and speak to us. It may not even be about right at home, is it? You know, that's the whole purpose of it. It's
We've
not
had
even
some very interesting questions along the way. It's a challenge.
No, absolutely, and you know, from our point of view as well, is making sure that people know that we're accessible. So we have an email address set up, which I'm sure can go at the bottom of this video, but it's also called careadvisors@rightathomegf.co.uk. You know, you can email that for some further advice, and you know, either myself or Jenny will pick that up and be able to point you in the right direction.
Can you explain more about funding and thresholds?
Well, funding comes in all shapes and sizes with regards to care. You've got local authority funding, you have funding via the NHS with continuing healthcare. You have different thresholds that you have to meet, and it's not just a financial means test or a threshold from that perspective, but also an eligibility based on the level of care that is required. For an individual that is end of life perhaps, or requiring palliative care, that may be funded more so by the NHS continuing healthcare setup, because 9 times out of 10 you become eligible for that when you are, you know, noticing a stay in hospital for a loved one, or if you have, you know, suddenly received a diagnosis which is meaning that you qualify for palliative care operations, so to speak. As far as the thresholds are concerned, as I've already mentioned, from a local authority perspective, the general rule of thumb is around £23,250. Now, this is subject to change depending on when you're viewing this video. I mean, we're in May 2026 now, so it could be completely different in 10 years' time. However, the council are very open as far as what that threshold is, how you meet it with regards to assets, whether it be a home that you're staying in or that you own, whether a loved one is still in there, whether they consider that to be part of your financial assets, which then obviously have an impact on your financial means test. One thing that I would always suggest whenever I speak to anybody in a care advisory perspective, or that point of view, is to speak to your GP, to speak to an occupational therapist, because they are the best placed really to be able to submit that report on your potential healthcare needs, so that then you can access a specific level of funding. And that really is the crucial message that I know I speak to anybody that talks to me about funding and thresholds. It's very much get that GP to write down exactly the complex and the situation that you're in at this stage, because you're going to need that at some point, regardless.
100%. I think you've gone through that extremely well. It's a very complex issue. In the UK, social care funding is not free. There are the thresholds that Reese has spoken about that you need to have an understanding of. And then there's the timeliness of it, because if your local borough council is viewing, first of all, they're going to view your medical situation, find out all the details about why you actually need the care in the first place before they ever start on your financial assessment. So you could be weeks down the line whilst you're going through all of this. And what happens if it's an emergency need and you need the support there straight away? So, as Reece said, via your GP, get as much information as you can collate about your medical condition, and then decide, depending on where you are within that threshold mentioned, whether you are able to access social funding, or whether you are looking into the private market to get your needs met faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, just the message on that is that the timing is crucial. If you do qualify for that financial means test, don't postpone it. Make sure that it's in the diary, make sure that you're able to attend, invite as many family along to that as possible so that they can share on their experiences. If they're assisting with providing, care for you or a loved one, whether you're in that home, they need to be there to be able to back that situation up and provide that real life experience. The time scales can vary quite dramatically, and it may mean as well at the end of it that you don't qualify for full funding. However, you will qualify for a potential portion of the care package that you are requiring at that time, in specific circumstances. So, I wouldn't want the message from this to be one of disharmony of I've gone through it, and at the end of it, I wasn't qualifying enough for the threshold to be able to qualify for local authority funding. Well, you may actually qualify for a certain percentage. So push for that. Speak to your councils, and really make sure that you're sharing as much information as possible with them.
And of course, on the back of that, you've got carers allowance potentially, you've got attendance allowance, you've got blue badges. There are lots of other things that you can apply for to help you with your funding. And those are predominantly the main questions we are asked when we're out there in the community. How am I going to fund my care, and how timely will it be?
Would you be able to give guidance on rapid access to care, specifically around the difference between local authority and private?
So rapid access to care, as I've previously mentioned already in this podcast around CHC funding and how you may qualify for that with a hospital stay, that I would say is a very, very rapid turnaround for funded care. With that, you would be looking at private organisations to provide that care. If you're an existing client, for example, of Right at Home, and you are in hospital requiring an increase to a care package which you may not be able to fully fund, that's then when you need to have that conversation with the discharge teams, and they will obviously then have their reports and medical reports to look through, to deem whether you qualify for a CHC funded healthcare package. Now, with that, for example, you would then be discharged from hospital, and you would still have the same faces that you would have previously had if you had a smaller package of care already with Right at Home. The flip side to that, so that's kind of on the extreme side, I would say, of really kind of high priority, urgent, and very, very important, to if you are starting to approach the financial means test threshold. My advice then, and my advice to anybody that I speak to in a care advisor's capacity, is to book that assessment in as soon as possible when you are approaching it, or perhaps you're just about to hit that threshold, because the wait time from a financial means test from the assessment to care beginning with local authority can be rather vast. I mean, we're looking at potentially timescales of up to 6 months, from Surrey County Council in a recent webinar that they hosted. So from that perspective, my advice would be to make sure that that means test is booked in, the assessment is a go, and so that you've got that availability, or you're already starting the timer really to that level of funded care. Now, going back again to something I've mentioned around direct payments and a percentage being funded via local authority. So you may already have a care package, for example, with Right at Home, that you then wish to speak to the council about to see if you can gain some additional funding. There would be no timescale differences from 6 months onwards for that to kick in. That I would advise speak to the council, because that time and scale does vary as to when you would be deemed to receive direct payments or a percentage of your care package that is already privately funded. So really, from that perspective, it varies is the honest answer, and it does vary based on condition, based on certain perspectives, and also the financial means test does come into play as well. On that. So it's vital really that you start that process as soon as possible, whether it be speaking to your local authority, whether it be speaking to a social worker, whether it be speaking to your GP, to your occupational therapist, to having those assessments in place because the timing is crucial.
And inevitably, the speed of your care comes very much with hospital to home.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will have falls. There's massive statistics on the amount of people that have falls in their own homes. And if you're then going into a hospital and you've damaged a hip or something serious where you're needing an operation, you're then going to be looking at some form of rehabilitation. There's the whole respite conversation that's going to be had. And that's when you really do want speed of care, because the speed of your rehabilitation totally depends on getting your access to the care that you need, to have your physiotherapist, to do the exercises that you need, to get you back on your feet quicker. There's the comical phrase of, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And you hear this time and time again when people come out of hospital having laid in a bed and have no strength of muscle, no core stability, and you've got to start working that up from scratch. So we additionally have things like our Love to Move, which we recommend people to come and join, so that you are fast tracking back to your best mobility that you can in your new circumstances. And we are helping you to look at the types of mobility aids that through your rehabilitation might be useful to you. We often visit the providers of the equipment that you need for that mobility and rehabilitation, and it's amazing how much equipment is out there. And it's being honest with yourself. Can you literally walk a straight line without toppling over? Do you need to still speak to your GP about dizziness? Is it something to do with your new medications? Or do you just have to be a realist and think that for now, I better have 2 sticks instead of 1, and maybe a Zimmer frame or some sort of a framed walker with a seat in case you get dizzy? Having your respite care with right at home, having us with our care advisory, means that we do go that extra mile to make sure that your rehabilitation and your living your best life is as quick as we can possibly make it.
That brings us to the end of the second episode of Home Care Matters. So a massive thank you to Jenny and Ruth for joining us.
Thank you.
That brings